they can do Sports Center on the road. We can do Fenway Rundown on the road. Chris Cotillo and Sean McAdam coming to you from a location unknown. I mean, you know it. It's Minneapolis, and we are both here. The
Floor
similar,
29 versus floor 30.
that's right. That's a self-dox, as the kids call it. But we are here in Minneapolis. Sean is one floor above me. And
Fitting.
yeah, exactly. And here's the Fenway Rundown on a Tuesday, July 29th. We'll level with you people. We expected to record this earlier in the morning, but yesterday was one of the longest days in the history of covering baseball. So we are recording it in the afternoon as the Red Sox get ready to take on the Twins for the second straight night. We are going to be, mostly trade deadline centric tonight with about 48 hours to go before that moment, but a little bit of game talk to start. Sean, we talk about how many games you've covered, and I give you a lot of crap about that very large number over and over and over again. Have you ever seen anything quite like what we experienced last night in the ninth inning?
I have not. I know that you asked Alex Cora post game if he could recall a ninth inning rain delay. I don't know that I had seen one until last night. And it was middle of the ninth inning, not about to start the ninth inning. We were, and the Red Sox were tellingly 3 outs away from what they thought was going to be a 4-3 win. And it went upside down very quickly with Jordan Hicks struggling, somewhat predictably. A guy that has some control issues, even on the best of circumstances. And Monday night was far from the best of circumstances with a 90-minute wait. He had gotten hot. That is, he had been warmed up and ready to come into the game and was trotting in from the bullpen when all of a sudden he was dodging the grounds crew and the tarp they were unfurling. And he sat in the clubhouse for 90 minutes, got up, got hot again, and couldn't find the plate. And what should have been a pretty significant 4-3 win to open a short road trip and a big win turned into a pretty crushing loss very quickly.
Yeah, and a really, really, really bizarre kind of 24-hour sequence for the Red Sox. We do not travel on the team plane, so I think that's somehow, some way, a misconception. Still, we fly obviously commercial and away from the team, and usually the day of. So the team flies when the last game wherever they are playing ends. So that was Sunday afternoon, and the charter had the worst experience ever. We went yesterday morning on separate flights. Sean's allegiance to American Airlines ruling the day yet again. But the Red Sox plane, which featured, the players, coaching staff, PR, and broadcasters, NESN and EEI, was basically a um, a flying vomit zone. It seems, to put it in very disgusting terms. We didn't get into this super in depth in the story I wrote pregame about players being unavailable and exactly what transpired, but just talking to people who were on the plane throughout the night, it was like 45 minutes of the worst turbulence, a thousand foot drops on the side, people throwing up everywhere, people praying, people sweating, people, completely out of it. To the point where, guys were legitimately reeling from this as they arrived at Target Field on Monday afternoon and even still after the game. I mean, I've never been through anything like that. And so I kind of did find it at the beginning of the day hard to believe people were still reeling 24 hours later, but people looked white as a ghost. Garrett Whitlock had an IV line in. It was not just him. There was a few guys who were off. I mean, that happens, I guess, to teams throughout the course of a 162 game season in different sports. Another kind of like, wow, I've never seen this before either type thing.
Yeah, I don't think that happens to that extent that frequently. That seemed to have been a harrowing flight, which included a detour into Detroit because of weather, taking the plane out of the sky for a little bit, and then resuming that flight, and just a completely unnerving experience that left guys reeling, as you said, a good 12 hours later.
Yeah, I mean, people were saying that they had bruises on their sides from how hard they were hitting the armrest on certain drops and turns. Um, Obviously, the motion sickness element. And think about when you're in a confined area like that, that's going on. That's a kind of um,
It's
a, tr
triggering.
a triggering thing for some others, let's just say. Um, and not just the sickness and the turbulence of the emotion sickness, but also the anxiety and the fear of being in that situation. Some people are nervous flyers. Dustin Pedroia, very, very, very famously that way. Some people can sleep through it, like Alex Cora did, said he did. So there were some who were unaffected. Most were. You play the games in front of you on the schedule wherever they are, but it was a factor. Obviously, the Red Sox looked good for the first 8.5 innings. That rain delay was, the story of the night by the end. And to dovetail into a trade deadline take, last night I think illustrated the most pressing needs of this team to me. And I don't think we needed more in the way of illustration when it came to that. I think we knew what they were. But Aroldis Chapman, I think he's going to be all right. Could be back in the next couple of days. Garrett Whitlock's been lights out, and Justin Wilson's been good. They didn't have those guys because they've overworked them. Jordan Hicks comes in as your quote unquote third or fourth best reliever. Jorge Alcala, who's been good, comes in as one of your better relievers and can't find the zone himself. It just illustrates that you need another trusted arm or two back there. And more pressingly, the Richard Fitz experience takes another downturn. He's optioned after the game. They'll fill a spot with somebody today, but they're going to fill that rotation spot on a more permanent basis moving forward. So they just don't have the pitching depth. Not on. I'm not talking about like who could come up from the minors or whatever. The back end of the staff on the current roster is not good enough and not major league quality right now, or not good enough to be in the roles they're in. And they do need very, very pressingly, like I said, two or three arms.
Yeah, I mean, we had, I think, started high on our expectations about what they might be able to do at the deadline and speculated that maybe if they were willing to give up a major league player like Jaron Durant and throw in another prospect, that that could get them a number two type starter. That now seems completely off the table given the asking price. And now it's they've readjusted their sights a little bit to the point where they just need a back of the rotation guy, whether that be Charlie Morton, whether that be Merrill Kelly, whether that be anybody like that on a rental. They need someone to make 8 or 10 starts here the rest of the way because the way things are going, Fitz has not demonstrated that he's capable of giving them even five, never mind 6 innings. And you're not getting Hunter Dobbins back. You're not getting all the people that we've run through. Cutter Crawford, likely not going to see Tanner Houck again. If we do, it's probably not in time to build up the start, maybe out of the bullpen. But the calendar is starting to work against them. Patrick Sandoval is not riding to the rescue as they had hoped he might be over the final 2 months. So they need a back end starter. That would not seem to be impossible to find, but it will be expensive just because of the number of teams in the market looking for any pitching they can get whatsoever.
Yeah, when you look at the rental market, you mentioned Kelly and Morton. There's Zach Eflin, Zach Gallen, every Zach in the world. Zach Efron might be available. You just have like this long list of guys. And Mike Soroka in Washington, who the Red Sox saw a couple weeks ago. Adrian Hauser with the White Sox. I mean, there's a long list of these guys that you can kind of plug and play. To me, you get a guy with big game experience. The Diamondbacks guys have that from being in the World Series a couple years ago.
Yeah,
Um,
Kelly has been a very good postseason pitcher.
Right. And, Gallen started the All Star game. He pitched in the World Series. The Diamondbacks have been good. The Morton thing speaks for itself. I know he's old, but he's been in big situations. Eflin is a guy they've liked for a long time. There are guys out there who, you can look at and just say he's a proven veteran. Think about obviously this one turned out to be like the 100th percentile of good outcomes, but think about the Evaldi move. I mean, I think that is kind of the comp of what this team needs. A pure rental, which he was at the time in 2018, with upside and a guy who can be a bulldog and a big game pitcher. Like it's not time to go get, oh, we think that we can make a couple adjustments and turn and get Quinn Priester or Kyle Harrison right now. They need the guy who's, even if he's only here for 2 months, fills that spot. Maybe two of those guys, because You get one of them, and you're still trotting Walker Bueller out every 5 days. Yes, he's been better. The one in Philly was great. The one against the Dodgers was not. That win was so good it kind of overshadowed it. If you get two of those guys, I think you're in a much better spot. Again, the prices are going to be prohibitive. The prices are going to be huge. And so, who's the Jalen Beeks you can trade? Who is that guy or who is that package? The asking prices are super high, and that's why I think we haven't seen the market move yet that much. But think about, like I said, it's just about pushing people into the roles that they, you know, fit at this point in their career. Where Walker Bueller as your five is better than Walker Bueller as your four. Richard Fitz is your six or seven, better than him as your five right now. Criswell and Kyle Harrison. Criswell's been good at AAA, and he was serviceable last year. It seems like he might come up today. Kyle Harrison has been shaky in Worcester. Those guys are your two depth options right now. You're better off with them as your eighth and ninth options, like they were early in the year when you had Priester, when you had Dobbins, when you had ABC, and so like just pushing everybody down the depth chart. And I think the same thing applies in the bullpen. Chapman's your number one. Whitlock's your number two. Wilson is probably in your number three range. Get somebody else or two more guys in that 3 to 5 range to put back Hicks, to put Alcala, Murphy, and they're getting Slayton back. Eventually, that'll be big, and he'll be right in that mix too. But
Yeah,
it's just about
I mean,
pushing
he hasn't
everybody
gotten
into
on.
the right,
Slayton isn't even on a mound yet. The
right.
hope is that he gets on a mound this week. Again, it's a reliever, so you don't have that long, month-long buildup where he's got to throw 2 innings and then 3 innings and then 4 innings and then spacing out every 5 days. A one-inning reliever can get ready pretty quickly, but at this point, you probably can't count on him until maybe the third week of August at the soonest. And that for now seems like a long time to go without another trusted reliever option. One other thing yesterday, we have not seen much pitching move, as you've suggested. We saw Ryan McMahon go. We saw Josh Naylor go. We saw we saw
Ahmed Rosario.
Rosario. We've seen a couple of hitters move. The only starting pitcher to move was yesterday. Chris Paddock, who was supposed to pitch against the Red Sox tonight for the Twins, goes to Detroit. This is a guy with an ERA of almost 8 over his last month. And the Twins were able to get rid of a salary and get a decent catching prospect in return for him. That tells you what the market looks like. I mean, Chris Paddock is a guy that I'm not sure is an upgrade here.
Yeah,
Would he have helped? I don't know. Is that better than Richard Fitz? Maybe, but it's not a slam dunk upgrade. And it cost the Tigers to take another contract off the hands of the Twins and return a pretty good prospect for a lousy, frankly, rental in Chris Paddock.
yeah, and that is, I mean, what you get this time of year. Teams need arms. Teams get short. I think the most interesting part of that Paddock situation, Red Sox related, other than facing a guy who started the year in single A tonight, um, is the fact that the Rays were also reportedly in on Paddock. That makes you wonder if they're back to looking into buying. That makes you wonder if top target Yandy Diaz is attainable at all. He's a guy we know the Red Sox like, and a guy that seems to be more available than ever after this Red Sox slide. How do you look at first base and especially the Diaz part of it?
Well, it has to take a backseat to the pitching
Right.
search. And it may be that at 3 o'clock on Thursday, Craig Breslow and the rest of the baseball ops department figures out, look, we need pitching, we need it in the rotation, and we need it in the bullpen. But the asking prices are just not logical here. We're giving up not just more than we should, but way more than we should. Let's hope we can find some internal solutions. Let's hope guys like Slayton get healthy, that Fitz can work on some things and be back and help out. Let's fix something we can afford to fix, and that's first base, whether it's Diaz or somebody else. They may end up going to number 3 on their pref list because the first two are just through the roof.
And O'Hearn still readily available and with Baltimore, another interdivision trade at this point. That matters, little. But yeah, I think those are the three areas they're trying to address. I think big picture, you look at, and we're sitting here, it's 1 o'clock Central on Tuesday, 2 days before the deadline. you talked about who has moved: Naylor, Rosario, Gregory Soto, McMahon, Paddock. Last night, some catching trades. Danny Jansen, old friend, pulled power, and I don't know if you knew this, but he actually played in the same game for two teams. Nick Fortes goes from Miami to Tampa. Don't really know who that is, but there was some moves along around the margins. I think the biggest developments on the trade market, Sean, the last few days are the guys who are not going to be available and not going to be moved. Emmanuel Clase, he's not getting traded, except potentially to the restricted list for good. And then Seth Lugo, a guy that would have been a pretty reasonable Red Sox fit and a guy they've liked in the past, ends up signing an extension with the Kansas City Royals. He's off the market, so the movement has come from guys being poached off the market. The starting guys, the guys you expect to move from the Arizonas and the Baltimores and Soroka and all those types of guys have not.
Yeah,
It seems
and
like,
it looked like
and
the Lugo extension was kind of a little baseball version of Brad Marchand, where the Royals went to him with what they thought was a reasonable extension, 2 years, 24 each, I think, was what it worked out to.
yeah,
And the timing of it suggests that they had said to him, look, we want to keep you. Here's a pretty good extension for another couple of years, almost $50 million guaranteed. But if we can't get a deal done, we have to think about moving you and getting something in return. And he ended up liking it there. And they end up spending some money and retaining a guy who I guess is, you know, a really good three or a decent number two is probably how you look at slot in Seth Lugo these days. That would have been a very nice addition for the Red Sox or any number of teams in the market for starting pitching. But you can only imagine what they were looking for and what the asking price was.
yeah, and one of the other after effects of that is, you know, if you are, I don't know, Baltimore, Arizona, and you look at Seth Lugo coming off the market, not because a team acquired him and filled their need, but because the Royals locked him up, that helps you because you can just, there's still the demand and less supply now. And that's good for those sellers. It's bad for the buyers. The same, Twins writers we were having dinner with last night were talking about, well, you know, maybe the Twins get really blown away for Joan Duran. I know he gave up a clutch hit to Abraham Toro last night, which might lessen his value, but maybe his value goes up because Class A is not on the board. Another one with the Guardians, people are talking about Shane Bieber as he nears the end of his rehab. Could the Red Sox make a play for him? That to me is a little risky coming off TJ. There's more certainty out there, but just this is kind of where we are right now. A Cleveland team that has been pretty good all year and now is kind of fallen out of it a little bit is entertaining, getting a guy through the rehab only to trade him at the end of that. You don't always see that.
Well, and you wonder if some of that is motivated by Class A
Hmm.
not being a piece they can move anymore.
Right.
And, they clearly need some offense. They clearly need a bat they have for a couple of years. They've done a very good job. That organization has been outstanding in developing starting pitching for the last 15 years. It's Chris Antonetti's superpower. That organization does well. Credit the Red Sox for being able to move so many position players up through the system. But if you're looking for the pitching equivalent, it's probably rather the Guardians. And the fact that they don't have Class A as a piece they can move and help them out in the future with some real significant offensive additions, they may be sort of pushed into moving somebody like Bieber to get something in return.
This is where I think we'll take this next. I, you know, don't think the Red Sox are looking at 2025 as their all or nothing year in the way they looked at, 2018. They had guys on expiring contracts the next
They're
year.
they're going to be better next year than they are this year,
Yeah.
and
So,
maybe better again in 27. So you don't want to blow it up here.
and right, but I'm saying you don't want to move off the long-term guys that could help you. And looking at the odds, Fangraphs has them right now. They're 6 games above 500. They're in the wild card mix, as we talked about. A 48.8% chance of making the playoffs. You've talked on this show repeatedly about how you think it's important to get back to the postseason and have that taste and get the guys experience. And you think there's people in the Red Sox organization that do agree with that and think that it's a good learning experience and it means something to get there. I do think there's also people from the very top. We know John Henry thinks this way, that looks at that, but really looks at the number next to it on Fangraphs, Sean, which says the chance of winning a World Series is 2%. This is a guy, and this is an ownership group that's won four of them. They're not going to get excited over a wild card round appearance. And so, to me, in the back of my mind, we know that John Henry, in talking about why or why not in private conversations with people in the past, he has wanted to add to the team or not, has cited World Series odds as a factor he looks at. That is a fact. He looks at it and says, we have a 2% chance of winning. Hey, let's not go all in. Let's do this. I could see that totally being in play here. Um, if those odds
But,
were
but but I also think that all in would constitute, moving Duran for
right.
a present day controllable starter. It might involve giving up a prospect that makes you a little uncomfortable to lose, whether that's Garcia or Connolly early or somebody that is a top 10 prospect in the organization. I think you can still make improvements and additions and improve your playoff chances without dismantling things or really eating into your future next 2 or 3 year view. There is a middle ground there that can be made. And while I don't disagree that John Henry is first and foremost a guy who is driven by numbers and uh, probability. That's how he made his fortune. It's how he governed many of the moves that he made when he bought the team. But I also think he understands the narrative in Boston is the ongoing narrative is they haven't made the postseason since 2021, and fans are restless. That's why Heim Bloom lost his job 2 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
because the major league team wasn't improving fast enough. And we can argue the merits of that decision in retrospect, but they are driven by box office, to use the term. And they know that yet another finish out of the running is going to keep that narrative going, that they're not a contending team. They're not driven by getting to the postseason. They're just happy to play 500 and pack Fenway Park. I think he realizes the inherent value of getting into October, even if it's for a round or two, even if you lose in the wild card or lose in the division series, which would not be constitute great success, even if you were to break that streak of not reaching the postseason. But I think he sees the value in shutting that narrative off. Okay, we made our baby step return. We got into the division series. We played in October. And now we're going to be better with Roman Anthony a year under his belt, with Marcelo Meyer a year under his belt, with all those guys and the next class of, Garcia and Early and Peyton Tolley and some of the guys who are knocking on the door. You can do both and not disrupt the flow of prospects coming up.
Yep, and the best way to do that, as we talked about, is still, I think, rentals. People look it up, just a rental, just a rental. Like, we have 2 months, you can't have a rental. Think about the recent rent. I mean, think about when it
Al
goes
Schwarber was
well.
a pretty good rental.
Kyle Schwarber, Evaldi, Steve Pierce. Those are three guys who were rentals. Just because Lucas Sims and Luis Garcia were terrible doesn't mean that you can't find, the good pieces out there when you aim high. Is anybody, crying about the loss of Jalen Beeks or Aldo Ramirez or Santiago Espinal or you name the prospect that's gone for a rental? Sometimes you're going to lose those trades. Often you're not. And so I think that's what they do between now and the 31st at 6. Between then, 2 games, Red Sox and Twins back at it tonight. Lucas Giolito looking to correct course after a 4-homer barrage in Philly the other night. The Twins are starting a gentleman whose name I do not know, and he again started the year in Single A. So they have some terrible players on their team. That's what we've learned here in the first
Yeah,
24
they're
hours.
they're not a very good team, and their veteran guys, whether it be Buxton's had a pretty good year, but
He's hurt right now.
Yeah, yeah, certainly. Carlos Correa is not having a good year at all. Royce Lewis has battled injuries, so what else is new? Yeah, they're, other than a couple of high-end relievers at the back end and some pretty good starters when Pablo Lopez is healthy, there's not a lot there, and the Red Sox really should. I mean, they should have the first one already under their belt. It got away from them, but there's really no excuse not to win the next two.
Yeah, I'm pretty. So his name's Pearson Ole.
Oh,
Pearson OHL. So hockey guy. Um, and he was a 14th round pick in 2021. He is 25. He's making his debut tomorrow. I don't know if they have a starter for that noon game either. That was listed as TBA. So, it's apparently Bailey Ober is pitching, but who
who
knows?
has not pitched well?
No, he is not for a while. So two opportunities to win games. They come home. They face a Houston team that has not played well, and they face the Royals, who can pitch but are out of it at this point. So should be, as you said, a chance to add a couple wins. We'll see if they do that in the next couple of days. But of course, the more pressing story, the impending trade deadline, you'll have it covered on where? MassLive.com.